The call came in as a welfare check, the most routine and benign of police requests, but it would lead to a scene so horrific it would permanently stain the minds of the first responders. In a small, unassuming brick house on a quiet, tree-lined street in Louisville, Texas, a place where neighbors waved from manicured lawns and children's bicycles lay discarded on driveways, lived the Alma's family. To the outside world, they were a portrait of the immigrant dream realized. Yasser Abdel Said, the father, was a taxi driver who had built a life for his family far from his native Egypt. His daughters, Amina and Sarah, were bright American teenagers. Amina, at 18, was a recent high school graduate with a warm smile and a love for social media, where she posted pictures of herself in prom dresses and with friends. Sarah, just 17, was a spirited soccer player, her life a whirlwind of practices and school events. But behind the closed doors of the house on Elm Street, a dark and controlling obsession festered in Yasser's heart. He viewed his daughters not as individuals with their own dreams, but as extensions of his honor, their behavior a direct reflection on his name. Their embrace of American culture, dating, wearing makeup, having male friends, wasn't teenage rebellion to him. It was a profound, unforgivable betrayal. The tension had been simmering for years, a low-grade fever that occasionally spiked into violent outbursts. Yasser's disapproval was a constant, oppressive force. He monitored their phones, criticized their clothing, and seethed at their friendships with boys. The final, irrevocable break came when the sisters confided in a friend about the abuse they endured. Child Protective Services became involved, and for a brief, hopeful period, the girls were placed in foster care. But family bonds, twisted as they were, proved difficult to sever. They returned home, and Yasser, outwardly, seemed to have softened. He promised change, a fresh start. In late December 2007, he suggested a trip. Just a drive, he said, a chance for them to talk and reconnect. It was a lie, meticulously crafted. On New Year's Day, 2008, he told his relatives he was taking Amina and Sarah out for a meal. The girls, perhaps clinging to a shred of hope that their father meant his promises, got into his taxi. They were never seen alive again. The taxi, a white Ford Crown Victoria, was found abandoned days later in a parking lot in the nearby city of Irving. It was there, in the confined, impersonal space of his cab, that Yasser Said had executed his plan. He did not take them to a restaurant. He drove them to a place of his choosing, a location he believed would be the final, silent witness to his act of vengeance. As the two sisters sat in the back seat, likely confused and growing fearful as they drove past familiar landmarks into the unknown, their father's rage finally boiled over. There was no struggle, no chance for escape. With a coldness that defies comprehension, Yasser Said produced a handgun and opened fire. Amina was shot multiple times. Sarah was shot at least twice. As they lay dying, huddled together in the back of that taxi, their father fled, leaving his daughters' bodies to be discovered in the ultimate act of cowardice. The scene was not one of a crime of passion, but of a cold, calculated execution. The investigation began with the grim discovery in the taxi. The Louisville police, quickly realizing the magnitude of the crime, called in the FBI. The absence of the father was the first and most glaring clue. Yasser Said had vanished. Interviews with family and friends painted a stark picture of a man consumed by a warped sense of honor. The girls' diaries and social media posts became critical evidence, digital tombstones detailing their fear and their father's tyranny. They spoke of his threats, his controlling nature, and their own desperate desire for a normal life. A friend came forward, revealing the girls' secret recordings of their father's tirades, where he explicitly threatened their lives for not being good Muslims and for embracing Western ways. The motive was clear. This was not a random act of violence. It was a premeditated honor killing, an attempt by Yasser Said to wash a perceived stain from his family's name with the blood of his own children. For 12 long years, Yasser Said was a ghost. He was placed on the FBI's 10 Most Wanted Fugitives list, his face a haunting reminder of the 2 young lives extinguished in the name of a twisted ideology. The international manhunt stretched across continents, but he seemed to have evaporated. The breakthrough would not come from a high-tech tracking operation, but from a tip, a whisper in the dark. In August 2020, acting on a lead, federal agents closed in on a modest home in Justin, Texas, just 40 miles from the scene of the murder. He had been hiding in plain sight, sheltered by family members who had chosen to protect a murderer over seeking justice for their own kin. When agents entered the home, they found an old man, his body weakened by time, but his eyes likely still holding the same cold conviction that led him to murder his daughters. The law had finally caught up with the monster of Elm Street. In 2022, Yasser Abdel Said stood trial for the capital murder of his daughters, Amina and Sarah. The courtroom heard the harrowing evidence, the story of 2 vibrant girls whose futures were stolen by the man who was supposed to protect them. There was no remorse in him, only the rigid posture of a man who believed, to his core, that he had done what was necessary. The jury deliberated, and the verdict was swift. Guilty. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring he would die behind bars, his name forever synonymous not with honor, but with infamy. The quiet street in Louisville has moved on, the brick house now occupied by another family, but the echo of the shots fired in a taxi on New Year's Day remains. He sought to reclaim his honor through an act that would forever define him as a monster,